Hi, I'm Jim Sharpe. Welcome to the AZ Political Podcast. Our headline this week, the U.S. Senate will vote again for a ninth time as of the time of this recording on the House-passed short-term spending bill that would end the federal government shutdown right after it rejected it the eighth time last night. Republicans need at least 5 Democrats to break a filibuster and have made zero progress in more than 2 weeks since the shutdown began. Yeah, we're now officially in week 3. Meanwhile, the shutdown is the reason that House Speaker Mike Johnson says he has still not sworn in Arizona Congresswoman-elect Adelita Grijalva, even though she says she doesn't need the pomp and the circumstance that's involved with having the House in session. So what are the impacts on little old Arizona when it comes to having a federal government shutdown? Does it get worse the longer it goes on? Let's ask our guest this week. Noted Arizona economist Jim Rounds, noted because, you know, you're on Arizona's Morning News.
Yeah,
sometimes.
you just noted me, so I appreciate that.
Right, exactly. So he's chief economist, president too of Rounds Consulting Group, and Jim's known for providing advice to policymakers at the Arizona State Capitol, to mayors and city council members and county board members throughout the state, and as well in the private sector. So welcome to the AZ Political Podcast. I talked to you many times on the radio. We've had lunch many times together, but I think this is the first time you've been on camera on the podcast.
That's right. I appreciate the invitation.
And you busted out the suit and everything. Well, you economists wear suits all the time, don't you?
No, we don't. I do my little LinkedIn videos, and I call it ball cap economics. I'm usually in a sports shirt and a baseball cap.
All right.
You know, what are you going to do?
I like it. Spitball economics, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like we've really had many large impacts here in Arizona in regards to the shutdown. Is my amateur assessment pretty good?
No, it's right. And it's because the economy is large. So even though it's little Arizona, our economy's been growing rapidly for a while now. And you're not going to notice some of the smaller impacts, like some federal workers not getting their paychecks. But those people sure notice it.
Yeah, I was going to say, so, unless you're a federal worker not getting a paycheck.
If we take the average across the board for all Arizonans, it's not going to be a huge impact. But for the individuals that are being affected, it can be devastating. And what we don't know, because there's kind of been hints that maybe we're not going to do what we typically do, is sometimes you're just taking money that's going to be spent in one month and spend it in another. So let's say you were very well-to-do financially, and I owed you $50,000, and I said, I can't pay it this month, but I'm going to get you next month. You'd be like, all right.
Yeah.
If you weren't well-to-do and you're working paycheck to paycheck, and I owed you $500, and I said you're getting it next month, that's a bigger deal. But what if I also said, I'm going to try to get you next month, but I might not? That's even worse. So we have to differentiate between what's permanent and what's just pushing activity from one month to the next or one quarter to the next.
So what could be permanent?
Well, when we go through economic recessions, we go through downturns, that's a great time to actually clean house in government. I mean, whether you're Democrat or Republican, everybody acknowledges that when times are good, there's extra money. The government's going to spend whatever money is coming in one way or another. But when times are tight, it's the opposite. So I guess the answer is difficult because it's hard to know how it's going to impact the U.S. as a whole versus just Arizona specifically. And I don't know how much.
Let's look at it macro.
Sure.
So how does the U.S. overall get affected? And then we can maybe drill down a little more.
Okay. Well, we have reductions in the payments going out to everybody related to a lot of the we have a lot of workers that are going to have to wait to get their checks. Mm-hmm. You have small businesses that wanted to get loans. That could have a lasting impact. The person waiting to get their check, if it's a retirement check, whatever it might be, I think a lot of those are going out though. But a lot of those people will get it the next month, so I'm not as worried. But when you go through a downturn and you're cleaning house, you have to go ahead and try to. You don't want to cut people's jobs. You don't want to be the lawmaker where somebody can say, well, you know, they indirectly fired me and another 30,000 people. But what if a slowdown causes that many people to need to be laid off? and you want a smaller government, what do? You do less hiring. So is this going to be an indirect way of kind of cleaning house like a downturn, which we're probably going to have next year anyways? So we're going to be cleaning house a couple of times potentially. So I don't know what the federal government and the president want to do. If they want to take advantage of this to say, okay, we're not going to be paying some of these workers. They're being furloughed, but we don't need that department. So they're not coming back. That's a permanent reduction in economic activity. But at the same time, it's a redirection of where the money's being spent. Is it going to be spent in a more efficient place or not? With government, it's hard to know.
Yeah. Well, I know. I think it was just yesterday, President Trump said, "Look, we're gonna cut Democrat programs. We're not going to cut Republican programs because we know they work." So that's kind of a way of cleaning house a little bit, isn't it?
I think it is, and the statement's incorrect because it shouldn't be about government programs being Democrat or Republican. I worked on a lot of very conservative related economic development projects since the Great Recession, tax cuts, economic development programs. Those are typically seen as being a little bit more right-leaning. And then lately, as we've been fine-tuning the Arizona economy, it's been working on things like, can we save taxpayer money if we do some criminal justice reform? Can we help foster kids? Those types of programs, childcare. A person working generates more tax payments than if they're not working and they're receiving tax payments from others. So you can actually have a bigger ROI on some of these projects that I call socioeconomic development projects.
Right.
And that freaks people out when I say that some of the biggest ROI projects that I've looked at have been some of these softer ones that people consider Democrat. But
ROI, by the way,
return on investment.
Thank you. Just want to make sure we get that economic term out there.
But it's not. To me, it's not a Democrat issue. It's a good policy issue. If we can increase the quality of the services at a lower cost to the taxpayer, how is that not a Republican issue?
Yeah. So my mind goes to where my mind usually goes, and that is to members of the military who are, potentially going to be facing a couple of weeks here of not getting paid, yet having to show up to work. TSA workers, you've already got air traffic controllers concerned about their pay. And then you've got a partially open Grand Canyon. So there's, essential personnel there, but not non-essential personnel. That, I think, generates somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1 billion in economic activity, just the Grand Canyon. What effect could that have on Arizona's economy, as well as the merchants around Davis-Monthan Air Force Base and, near Luke Air Force Base? They have people, airmen and their families, who can't spend money over the next few weeks.
Yeah, so anytime money's coming into the state, whether a private sector company sells something to somebody out of state, the money comes in, that money bounces around, but the federal government money comes in and it bounces around and causes additional economic activity. So you add all of those things up and can be significant, but it also gets back to, are we losing something that's perishable? So let's say somebody was going to go take their family out to a local resort and do a stay vacation for a couple of days. Well, that empty room is not going to be recovered. That empty room is now permanently gone. If they decide to take the vacation this coming month, that's different. If they decide there's a little bit too much risk in the economy right now, I didn't receive a paycheck for a couple of weeks, we're not taking that vacation, we're going to cut back, then you have even bigger economic impact. So again, it's not going to derail the Arizona economy, but it's going to be very noticeable for certain individuals. And I would be more worried about it if this continues to be a problem. There's going to be a little bit of an uprising because of all the issues that we're talking about. And I even quoted Sean Connery from that movie Hunt for Red October, where he goes, a little revolution isn't bad from time to time. Or I can't do the accent, but a little revolution related to, all right, we need to fix issues related to the source of this, which is healthcare. But they've been taking a jackhammer approach to something where we really need a scalpel, and we need more time to implement it. And so this whole healthcare discussion and providing healthcare to people that aren't here legally, those discussions, I don't think that's going to go away. This shutdown isn't going to resolve that. This shutdown is going to end when people get very frustrated and people start thinking about the election next year, and then it ends. But we didn't resolve the core issue. And the core issue is, yes, we need some reforms, but we have to be smarter about doing it. And if you're going to shift stuff to states, you got to give us more time. We need at least 5 years, if not 10, to make a full adjustment to local covering of low-income individuals that need these healthcare projects.
Do you agree with something that Chuck Todd said to me last week, which is that it's going to be the air traffic controllers who decide when the shutdown ends?
Well, it's a joke, but it's not a joke, because that's one of those little, micro revolutions. It's all right, we're not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
But then again, is the solution going to be, all right, you're fired, we're going to bring in lower quality people? Are people going to want to do that?
Or is them not showing up for work?
And then that's shutting down travel all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's what's going to be. People are like, okay, now I'm calling my congressman. I'm sick of this.
And it goes back to the same thing. If everything was shut down unexpectedly and you're not planning for it, a lot of business activity isn't just going to be pushed back to the next month.
Right.
It's going to be gone forever. A lot of the small businesses, I feel one of the issues that I think about the most is probably the small business lending, because it's such a big part of our economy. Mm-hmm. And we've done so many small business analyses. There's still things that we can do locally to help them refine how they operate and become even more profitable and help the economy move forward. But if you're not getting the loans, then that's a major issue. So it kind of depends on, are they going to say, governments, we're going to extend it a little bit, but we're going to still have issues with this, and we're going to have to go through this again in another 2 months. Well, in 2 months, people are going to forget about all this because the holidays are coming up. So no one's going to be remembering the shutdown if it ends in the next week or so over the holidays. But unless it happens during the holidays, then we're in trouble. And
it happened, in 2019? I'm sorry, what year was it? It was 2018? It started in December and then rolled into 2019.
I think you're right. I think that's the year where one of the revolution items was there was a veteran that was visiting the memorials in D.C.
Right,
and they were closed. And when they closed them off, it's just
that was Obama. That was during Obama.
Yeah,
but I think the longest one was under Trump, and that was. It was like a few days before Christmas, and it rolled into January of the next year. Yeah.
But what was so fascinating about this one example was they put up little 2-foot tall fences.
Yes.
And a veteran that took a trip and spent some money to go visit essentially the memorial for his fallen comrades decided to go, and he wasn't going to not go and look at the memorial. So he stepped over the 2-foot fence and he got arrested, and it looked really bad. Well, that was the photograph that was on the front of a lot of papers and on the internet. And I think that kind of signaled the end of what's happening, because that was one of the most absurd things you've ever seen. Somebody that defended the country stepped over a 2-foot fence to pay respects to the people that died for their country, and getting pulled off in handcuffs. You start seeing some of those things, people are going to get pissed off.
Yeah. How much? So Evan Taylor, who's economics professor down at U of A, he was saying that it's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 0.2% of Arizona's economy would be affected by the shutdown. So, that grows to 0.4%. That's a decent amount over a couple of months, equating to a little more than $1 billion in economic activity. Is that kind of roughly in the ballpark?
It's in the ballpark before we get to that issue of, are we getting it back later or not?
Right.
And really it comes down to that, because I think the federal worker count is a little short of 60,000 in the state. And federal workers, ironically, are some of the higher paid workers in the rural parts of the state. So we'll see probably disproportionate impacts in rural Arizona and impacting smaller businesses. And those are those areas that are golden for a lot of lobbyists and others, when they can have a project that they're working on where they can say, this is helping small businesses in rural Arizona. You get, 2 of the check boxes and maybe a couple of stars for your jacket. So it depends on how they do that. The dollar amount sounds about right.
So, and I hope I didn't misquote you, Evan. I hope I didn't. So I'm going to ask you if you're willing to wade into a little bit of politics here.
Oh, you know me. I can't shut my mouth.
Okay. All right. So, because you just told me as you sat down before we started taping, you just told me, you had been meeting with somebody who's a Democrat And I know you work with Republicans too. So I'm just like, okay, so who do you blame for the shutdown? Is it, senators like Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallego who are refusing to budge off of this? We've got to, we have to fully fund the American Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, or is it the Republicans who are refusing to even listen to any of that talk?
It's both. It's like the Democrats try to build a house with toothpicks and bubble gum, and then the Republicans came in to fix it with a sledgehammer. The two are so far apart. The Democrats have to do a better job in figuring out how you can have some balances in the economy. No, the current healthcare system isn't perfect, and it can be refined. But you can't just complain about things. And this is what I learned in terms of doing economics and policy advising. I can't just say, this is a dumb idea, because I'd be saying it an awful lot, of course.
Right.
But this is a dumb idea, but here's a better solution. And then people want to talk about the solution, then it goes somewhere. I feel like we're not really seeing that, because we have to modify the healthcare system going forward, and things do need to change. I don't think the Democrats are wanting to do as much change as is probably needed, but the Republicans aren't backing down. And a lot of both sides are basing their comments recently on those political books of dogma that I say they get when they join a political party. They keep in their back pocket.
Yeah.
Republicans also keep a copy of the Constitution, which I think is kind of cool. If you go up to almost any Republican and you ask if they have a copy, they'll take out the Arizona Constitution from the jacket or their back pocket. But both sides are at fault on this. And are they going to come together? No. Will this issue be resolved? Yes. But it's not going away, and it's going to get even worse when the economy continues to slow into next year and there's less revenue and there's going to be more problems that the government faces. It'd be more ideal to fix this now before the end of this calendar year. And we get asked all the time, are we going to have a recession this year? And I used to give more technical answers. My answer is no. Why? Because we're already midway through October. There's not much of the year left. So the odds of us having a recession this year are smaller just because there's only a couple months left after October.
Makes your answer easy.
It's an easy answer, and I'm sure I'll nail that forecast. But even if we just have a slowing of the economy, it's going to put more pressure on issues like this. And the same people that are struggling with just dealing with these healthcare issues, how are they going to deal with the slowing of the economy and all the other issues that come with it at the same time? That's too much to juggle.
So I think you blamed both sides.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say both sides are at fault. And that's the safest answer. If I said one side, then, of course you get in trouble. But I mean, some people will say, well, neither is really at fault. It's a complex issue. And, there's so many different factors and variables. They're stubborn, and politicians don't make decisions based on, I always say economics first because I'm an economist, of course, but let's just say what appears to be good, what makes sense. It's based on how do I strengthen my political position? What are my advisors telling me?
Yeah.
Am I going to make a run for this office next time around or a different office? There's all these other things that they're thinking about where they should be thinking about what are they going to do now. And there's some people that do think in those short terms. I've been told that when I run for office, if I do, that I'll be able to get elected, but I won't get reelected because I tend to say things like I do when I talk to you.
Well, if you don't launch your campaign video in a ball cap, maybe that might be. So I think, if anybody's interested in my opinion, both parties are at fault. And the main reason they're at fault for this shutdown is because of something that has not been done in 29 years in this country, which is pass a dang budget. They can't pass a budget. And they can't figure out, first off, they can't pass a budget and they can't pass a balanced budget. There's no way. It's impossible at this point, it seems like. And it is such a shame that they can't do what every other sub-governmental agency, or what is it? What do they call it? It's not a sub-government, but it's,
the local government,
states. Yeah, the states. We can't. I know what the word state is. I was looking for the the hierarchy of government. And of course, there's a lot of people that believe that the federal government really isn't over the states, but that's how it breaks down. But, in Arizona, we have to pass a budget and it has to be balanced. We don't have that option. So is there ever going to be an appetite in this country for a constitutional convention where we force the federal government to pass a budget and a balanced budget every year?
Here's what I like about what you said is you said what should be the first stepping stone on this path that we're talking about towards resolving this, and that's pass a budget. I mean, that's their primary job. It's a state's primary job. It's a municipality's primary job. It's to pass a balanced budget.
And corporations have to do the same thing.
Exactly. And, you at the national level, of course, you have the ability to add debt. So you don't need to have a balanced budget on an annual basis. But the national debt has gotten so large. Is somebody going to really complain if it's over $30 trillion? Is somebody going to say, well, it's out of balance, but it's going to add another $500 billion to it? It's a small percent increase, but we added around $10 trillion to it in just the last handful of years. So it's been escalating, and I'm asked all the time. One of the questions I'm asked the most is about the national debt. What can we do? Where can we cut? And if you looked at any of those little videos where somebody, shows the percentage where there's discretionary spending at the state level and then there's federal level issues like that, you can't just cut. How do you increase tax revenue? You got to increase productivity of people. So if everybody's making 10% more, our budget problem's resolved. How do you make 10% more? We have to have more skilled workers, which means we need more training, which means we have to invest in some of those projects early on, which is something that Arizona's been focusing on quite a bit. That's why we've been moving past other states in terms of our economic potential. But we have to analyze these things and say, okay, where are we going to get that biggest return on investment back to ROI for the taxpayer for these individual programs? So we have to do this across the entire nation. We have to invest in things. And unlike where all the money was going out on all these grants for green energy and everything else, it wasn't the topics I was concerned about. It was the haphazard way that $1 billion was being spent here and $1 billion was being spent there. And I got to see so many bad projects that didn't just fail to advance the Arizona economy. I feel like there was enough misinformation to pull us back. But we received the grants and everybody was happy about it. But now our kids and our kids' kids are going to have to pay for that national debt. But I'm hoping that maybe they'll be the ones that are the higher income earners, and then they can pay it down and then punish us later when we're too old to fight back.
Do you think there's anything to the idea of let's just default and say it doesn't matter because we're not going to overspend ever again? And we won't need a credit rating because the federal government's not going to ever borrow money again, unless times of war, of course. Yeah, we can help ourselves with doing war bonds, right?
Yeah, I think I won't even go there. That's almost pushing it even for me. So I think it'd be a bad idea to say, sorry, but we're going to default. You default by just letting that debt roll. Whether or not we start, the problem is that we have to pay interest on all this, and that's the problem. And it's adding up and it's adding up. But at some point, we have to figure out a way. Now that we added that extra $10 trillion, the answer before was pretty easy. Everybody in the country makes an extra 5%. The national debt has gone in a short amount of time. Now it's so much bigger. You need a bunch of things. So you do need to thin out the federal government, and you do need to have higher levels of productivity among workers. And I'm not talking about new stuff. Like the first economists were actually those old philosophers. And the very first economic principle wasn't supply and demand. It was, hey, if you can make more stuff, you're going to be better off.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish we could go back to those times where we can have those conversations at the Capitol where we can say, we're going to educate people so they can make more stuff, and they're going to use equipment made by people that are better at making equipment, and we're going to have all these neat things. We just start reducing things down to that kind of terminology. I think people will finally get it.
Yeah. Well, problem is, you can't make TikTok videos in a factory. Right?
That's true.
That's what everybody's so focused on these days. Thank you, Jim Rounds of Rounds Consulting. Always insightful talking to you, and I appreciate your approach to all of this. And I even appreciated the way that you walked around blaming Democrats or Republicans. Maybe you should be a politician.
Well, you inspire me, and it's always a privilege to chat with you.
All right. And thank you for watching the AZ Political Podcast. I'm Jim Sharpe, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching the AZ Political Podcast with Jim Sharpe. Click the box to watch more from KTAR News and tap the button in the middle to subscribe.